I think it's safe to say that a lot of parents are quite overwhelmed. What are some practical, everyday ways that an overwhelmed parent can start to kind of self-regulate and still find meaningful ways to show up in their parenting?
Yeah, definitely. It's important to be able to do that for yourself as a parent, because life is hard and the things are not going to stop for you because you're overwhelmed, right? So the first one I like to do, and my patients really don't like me when I say, okay, maybe we should just take a moment and breathe. They're like, that's such a therapist thing to say. I don't have time for that, you know. Some of them really say that to me, like, no, I don't want to breathe.
I don't have time to breathe.
Especially your very high functioning people, you know. But honestly, to be able to regulate your nervous system, you have to breathe. You have to change something physiologically, right? So breathing, I want to talk about the 4-7-8, right? Kind of method. Like you take a breath, but you count 4 when you're going in. Okay, and then you count, and then when you exhale, you count, but you do it slower. So that's why it'll be 8 or 6. I see you need this.
Like that felt quite good, actually.
Yes, right? So it's actually 4 and then 6 to hold it in and then 8 coming out. Hold it a little bit. Maybe let's do 6 rather. And it'll be quick 6, not like... And then breathe out.
Oh, wow.
Can you feel something that your body feels different?
Definitely.
And you can do that just 5 times.
Yeah.
Even 3 times makes a difference. Sometimes I just say, so I do this as well. Sometimes I just feel like, oh, this is too much.
Yeah.
And I'll just go. And that's it. Even 1 will be able to just like get me, you know. And sometimes you can just say to your child, okay, let's all take a breath. And then they do it as well. And then it also just helps them. And then everything is quiet. And then your nervous system just kind of, you know, regulates.
Yeah.
So it's stuff like that. But it's also stuff like making a cup of tea.
Yeah.
Saying to someone, saying to the kids, guys, let's just take a moment. We're coming to talk about everything that happened today because they all want to tell you what happened at school. But let mommy just put her back down and I'm going to go make a cup of tea. And then because a cup of tea is warm, so it's also regulating your nervous system, right? Stuff like, so it's small stuff you can do, right? Think about 5 senses.
Yeah.
So this is another thing that we do with patients in the ward when we're teaching them how to self-regulate. So I always say, think about your 5 senses. So it'll be your sight, your smell, your taste, your hearing, and then touch. You can find something in all of those that's going to help you regulate.
Yeah.
One of the things I love doing, and I know everybody who has, you know, a kind of like a dependence on social media likes doing, is I like to go to Pinterest when I'm stressed and just scroll through Pinterest because for sight, it's stimulating me, right? So I see colors, I love makeup, I love like nails, I love fashion, and I just see different things. And already even 2 minutes of that regulates me. Or you can go out into your garden and just look at things, because looking at different objects that are different to what you're looking at in your house, it actually also regulates the nervous system. Touch. So you can, you know, like nowadays, even 40-year-olds, we knit, hey? I promise you, people knit. Maybe
I've actually seen quite a lot of people knitting.
Right? Young people, even younger than 40, they knit because it's regulating as well. Here's the soft thing. And also you are incorporating, you know, like some cognitive processes that are actually helping you calm down.
Yeah.
You're focusing on something.
Yeah.
But it's not...
Probably goal-orientated. You're working towards a goal.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's not something that has pressure. You're just doing it. So touch, the warm cup of coffee also incorporates touch. What have I had? Smell. Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, hearing, music, white noise, calming music. Nowadays we have apps.
Yeah.
Say you had a busy school drop-off in the morning. When you get into the car, you can just put on your Calm app and you can choose like a meditation thing on it. Or you can just play some nice music, calmish music, and you can drive to work. By the time you get to work, you've regulated.
Yeah.
What are we missing?
Smell. Yeah.
Have you ever walked into a house where someone is baking cookies?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, the best.
Gingerbread.
The best, right? So that also, you can just like do something. If it's not baking and it's gonna take time, you can do a diffuser. There's so many things that you can do with all of that, the 5 senses, that is actually going to regulate. So those are tangible things that we can do as parents.
I mean, I already feel calm. Not just from like the breathing except but just thinking about like lavender, like holding that cup of tea. And I always think about it like when I'm stressed out and overwhelmed, then I feel like I want to do things that remind me of like a freer time, right? And sometimes it's not possible because you have 4 kids running amok all over the house and like shouting and fighting with each other, and then it's a mess. But so sometimes it's not, you can't just drive out and like just go out for a drink,
Exactly.
But sometimes it's taking a bath. Sometimes it's just reminding yourself of a freer time, and that could be a book, that could be sitting and reading a book. I mean, sometimes it happens once the kids are asleep and everything is done. But sitting and reading a book, taking a bath, walking, going for a walk, something that just reminds. There you go. Yeah, something that just reminds you of like a freer, kind of calmer self. And I think then, because we love our kids, we love our lives. They are busy and they're hectic, but we are very happy to be in there. We wouldn't give them away.
No.
I mean, some people would, but most people would not give their kids away. And so I think that we want to come back to that, but we want to come back to it as kind of the best version of ourselves. And I think just taking yourself away from that brings you back to it with a sense, kind of a better sense of appreciation.
You know what, actually, Kuzo, to add to that, I'm thinking, when you've done the bubble bath and you've done, you've taken time out to listen to some music or read a book, most parents actually feel then guilty for taking the time out. How dare I close the door and lock it and have a 30-minute bath? Or, how dare I do whatever?
How dare I not be there for that meltdown because I was taking a walk in that time?
Yes. So that's something I think is important for us to actually think about with parents, or say, in this moment, that it's just interesting that the guilt always finds a way to creep up. But then what do we do with that? I think taking a moment, reminding self and saying, watching self, right? To say, oh, did I just do that? Did I just take time out for myself and then guilt trip myself, right? Because that kind of like just almost takes you 2 steps back when you've taken one, or 2 steps forward, and then how many ever steps back? So, I think it's really useful to think about that almost punitive voice in us that does that, and then how do we kind of like, I guess, manage it, to talk to self and say, wait, what am I doing here? And then kind of like reposition yourself, right? What do you think of that?
Yeah, I think absolutely. I mean, I think like you mentioned exercise. I think you mentioned exercise earlier, and just what being outside can do. Not just for us, for the kids. So at least you don't have to leave them behind, right? You can actually take them with them.
Then you can come and not feeling guilty.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a good one. I actually like that one. Well, their dad loves that one more than me, right? Okay. So he always says, I think if you're feeling overwhelmed, because I feel overwhelmed quicker than he does. He's able to, compartmentalize, I guess. Okay. But like when I start saying, I'm about to go crazy in this house, he'll be like, no, let's take them out for a picnic. And what that does is the 5 senses thing, you get it done all in one. So the sight, you're going to be seeing things that are different to stimulate, right? And to kind of like regulate your nervous system. And then you're going to be smelling things, flowers, whatever. Your neighbor sometimes bakes. And then as you walk to the car to drive to the park, you smell the stuff, right? And then you have sight, and we've done, then you have hearing. So you're going to hear the trees, and instead of having your Calm app on, you have the trees giving you the white noise, right? And the calming kind of like sound. Taste. Well, that one, I think we're going to have to maybe take some snacks and go outside and get that. But being outside in nature, we don't have to we don't have to like do anything and buy anything and get anything. We're getting that for free. You know, we're actually grounding ourselves. Even walking barefoot when you get there with the kids, that's actually very grounding.
I love that.
Right?
I love that, like wet grass between your toes. I find it, so I think it reminds me of my childhood, actually. I think it reminds me of like just a calmer, less stressed out time.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it just does something to your body. So the wet grass, actually, that cold thing does something physiologically as well. But yeah, so that's an important one.
Yeah. Okay. And how do we navigate the unrealistic expectations? Like, how do we look at the WhatsApp group going mad? Check social media and see what every other parent is doing that seems to be this perfect parenting. How do we kind of align ourselves and forgive ourselves almost in advance for the things that we know, for the standards that we know we're not ever going to be able to reach? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Look, that one is, I must say, it's a challenging thing to do, especially in this day and age. The first thing that I'm thinking of is that I think like having more than one child, like when you have like the second or third, you realize also that you don't have as much time for, you know, social media or for like doing whatever. And I found that to be actually a blessing in disguise. I found being less on my phone and doing less in, I guess, you know, engaging less with social media really does help. Yeah. I used to look at parents who just like, oh, I don't do social media, or adults who say I don't do social media. I'd be like, oh my gosh,
how do you live?
Yeah, how are you living without? And now I actually find so much benefit in that. But say you work, your work needs social media. I've got a friend who actually runs a full-time business on social media, so her job is being there full-time. What then do you do? I think the first thing is to have your own standards. Have your own standards and benchmarks and expectations. Stuff like spirituality, stuff like just knowing what grounds you, right? So stuff like knowing that, okay, having a fancy car, having a fancy house, or taking my kids to a fancy holiday and whatever, is not really, in terms of my values, that's not what makes my kids happy or grow up to be good adults. Or so knowing that I see this thing, but then going back and reminding yourself. So talking to yourself is actually very important, right? Yeah. Sometimes no one's going to come and tell you that this is what you need to do, or do less of this, or what. So no one's going to regulate you, instead of you actually pausing and saying, look, is this actually real? Yeah. You know, most of the things we see on social media anyway that's not the life that person lives. Yeah. They're just showing you that peak of, you know, when they went to Bali, they're just showing you that peak. But actually their day-to-day life is them with no makeup, them just cooking and, you know, normal meals, you know, like all this like gourmet stuff that people know, gourmet food. And their house is actually way more messy than they, you know. So I think reminding self, having your own standards of life, what you deem as important as values, I think reminding yourself of that is very important. And presence over perfection, right? Yes. Yeah, because 100%. I don't think there's such a thing as perfection, really. No ways. It doesn't exist. Yeah. It's actually like a false kind of like unattainable thing. Yeah, that serves to just make us more anxious, actually. Okay. So let's reframe. Let's reframe January, February. Let's reframe the start of the school year. Yeah. For parents, what does that look like? What does it look like for me to be just enough? I think there are a couple of things that are important if you're thinking about, here's the new year starting, and kids are going back to school. What are the important things, right? I think kids being emotionally stable and emotionally kind of like centered and happy and excited for school, excited for learning is way more important than the grades. In fact, them being emotionally stable is going to get you the good grades versus drill them to get the good grades. So kind of like spending time talking to your kids about like, how are you feeling about school? You know, are you anxious about anything? And kind of being able to get the feedback from them about what's what, so that you can actually help them to deal with their anxiety
meet
about
them where
what
they're at.
Exactly, right? And not really say, oh, you're so smart, you don't have to worry about that. Oh, you're so good with friends, you don't have to. But be like, oh, why do you think you are a bit worried about making friends, you know? And hearing what they are really, being curious about what really is going on for them.
That's such an important aspect and such a big contributor to how parents feel. Because if your child's not well, you know, from an emotional point of view, you're not going to be well. I actually had a really interesting discussion with Lerato around it, the clinical psychologist as well, around mental health in children. So it might be worth checking that one out. And I think that what you're saying is just so pertinent, you know, particularly around checking in, not just with children, but with yourself as well. And 100%. There's such a big part of parenting, or parenting well.
Definitely, you know, and also helping them teaching them how to, because when you check in, you teach them and you kind of give them a safe space to say, I'm not okay, Mom. So they can come back and say, actually, today was a hard day, you know, in school. And I also think having good routines is important. You know, let's not be fixated on things being perfect, like we were saying earlier on, but, you know, just like having a good routine, because it also helps the kids, right? And then it takes away the heaviness of having things figured out all the time. When you know that bedtime is at this time, you know, no excuses, you know, and then this is at this time, do this, then you know that so I'm not saying to parents, have it figured out all the time. There will be a night or a week when things are a little bit all over the place. Concert week is like a mess in my house. It's like we're sleeping at whatever time, waking up tired, but every other week we try to get to bed at a certain time, right? So those routines are also healthy routines and balance. But also another one is making sure that your kids have fun. Like, you know, let's go swim, let's go whatever. So school goals are important, but let's also do fun things, painting, you know, going out to the park. So having that recreational time is also important.
I think what you're saying is, I mean, especially the part around routine, because for me, and I mean, like today I'm wearing my parent hat through and through, and my parent hat says to me that routine also reduces decision fatigue.
100%.
Because I think that the amount of thinking you have to do the moment you have to step outside of your routine is enough to drive you nuts. Is enough to cause you anxiety and overwhelm and parental guilt and all of it, all at the same time, because you're just so tired. Be it something as simple as what's for dinner can literally drive you up the wall.
That one is for me the one. When my helper asks me what's for dinner, I'm just like,
you decide. So
that's important.
If you were to leave parents with one pearl on how to survive this time, on how to survive parent guilt and overwhelm, which is what we've learned, a very normal part of parenting, a very normal part of navigating this journey, what would you say?
You know, I think it's most people, you know, when you're talking to a friend or a mom or even a therapist, they might say to you, know, you're actually doing so good and enough. But sometimes that doesn't really feel like
not enough.
It's not enough, you know, it doesn't really talk to that voice in your head. And I think what's important is to hold both compassion and some sort of standard in mind. Go back to your drawing board, and because it's important to have the standards, to have the goals. It's important, right, for that. So to have the structure, like we're saying. So I would say to parents, go back to your drawing board and think about this year. What were your goals? What were the important things you wanted for your family this year? Did you want more family time? Did you want, you know, kids to we're praying more in the home, that type of thing. And then go back and say, did we do it well or not? Why didn't we do it well? Didn't I put it in my schedule? That type of thing. And then in the next year, try to do it better. But also have a plan on how we're going to try to do it better. But I always say, like, just like fashion people, when they say, before you leave the house, take off one accessory. I always say to parents, you know, after you have this perfect plan, take it down a notch. being realistic. Be like,
I like that.
Yeah, it'll be like, are we gonna do this every day? Maybe we're not. Maybe let's do it 3 times a week.
Yeah.
Right. Whatever it is.
Yeah.
So I would say that go back to the drawing board, but also be compassionate with yourself and your family and your kiddies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. Thank you so much. Well, there you have it. Go back to the drawing board. Take it down a notch.
But have the standard.
Thank you so much, Lerato. This was just very containing for me, not just, as this person having this conversation with you, but as a parent as well. I think we do a lot. So if you're listening today and not enjoying this conversation because you can relate just too well, feeling so overwhelmed by what this new year is meant to bring, I want you to hear this. Burnout is not a personal failure. It's a cry that your body needs help. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Tiny Matters with Dr. K. Until the next time, stay kind and stay curious.